Good morning. Welcome to our presentation today on we need to trust God to work. Our lesson today comes from Matthew in the 13th chapter. Some call Jesus' parable the parable of the soils. This is based on the 4 types of soil and represent 4 types of people. Was it the sower or the reaper? No, but it was the soil. Have you ever planted anything? Some of you know that sometimes you have to plant seeds in very shallow soil. If you put too much soil on them, they don't grow up very good. And this was one of the things I had difficulty with, like, golly, we just got a little bit of soil on that. But they need to be able to go down, have a little bit covering them, and eventually you can put more on some plants than you can others. Now, people have been doing this for years. They pretty well know their soil, and they know how to do the things that need to be done in order to get a good crop out. Today, farming is different than it was many years ago in my early lifetime, and yours perhaps, because we have equipment now that does a lot of the work for us and makes it a lot easier. In the initial days, when you were going to turn the soil over, you got rocks of all kind. When we had a garden here in Gwinnett, across some waterworks, there were all kinds of rocks in there. You had to dig down there and get it. I'm talking about big ones that you could put both hands on to move. So today's lesson focuses a lot on soil, and we'll compare that, as Jesus did, to the things that planting the Word has to do. Soil necessarily being people. In Matthew chapter 13, verse 3 says, "Then he told them many things in a parable, saying, Consider the sower who went out to sow. And as he sowed, some of the seed fell on the path, and the birds came along, and they devoured them. Some other seed fell on rocky ground, where it didn't have much soil, and it grew up quickly, since the soil wasn't very deep. Some came up, but when the sun came out, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked it. Still other seed fell on good ground and produced fruit, some 100, some 60, and some 30 times what was sown." In Israel today, some of the areas that they grow things in have rocky soil. So that's probably similar to what they had during the time of Jesus. I've noticed that they've learned some things, because I doubt seriously that this was true when Jesus was here. But when you are in Israel today, you can look at a farm and it's got things housed in a cloth of certain type over the plants. There are 2 reasons that they do that. One is to retain the moisture that comes up from the soil and keep it within that particular area that they've planted things. The other is to keep bugs off. Now, some of you know that bugs can give you a real problem. So I keep thinking back to the days when we had a bunch of bugs, these Japanese beetles come in and they just rip up something good. And so people would take a milk jug and, cut the top off, put a funnel in it, drop something on the bottom for them, and the bees would go down there, but they couldn't get back up. Some use plastic water bottles for that purpose, because these bugs, these beetles, they'll eat things up for you. So in addition to having soil that's rocky or soil with briars in it, you have to be careful once you've planted your seed to give it an environment on which it can grow. And this continues in verse 18, where it says, "So listen to the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word about the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in its heart. This is the one that's sown along the path." Now, how does this go? I have several Christian friends who seem to believe that they've got to read their daily horoscope to get some idea of what the day's going to be like. God doesn't use a horoscope. He plants things in our minds and in our hearts, and when we talk with him about it, he can pretty well give us an idea of things we can do and things we can avoid doing. But the horoscope brings out good stuff. I mean, it makes you feel good. And some people consider this is just a way, you just can't live without reading my horoscope today. So you make sure that you give them your birthday and the month and all, and that way you'll find out what good things are going to transpire that day. Could there be some negatives? Well, maybe. And if that's the case, then you'll be able to make adjustments and take care of that. Verse 20 says, "And the one sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. But he has no root, and it's short-lived. When distress or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he falls away." There's a song the Gatlin brothers sing that I sort of like. They write a lot of their own music. And it's a song about a fella going down to the mission. He says, I'm going down to the mission again tonight. I'm going to get saved for the third time this week. What was he saying? He grasped it. He has an emotional attachment to it. But evidently, it doesn't last very long. That's true in some cases where people have accepted Christ, and like rocky soil, they don't consider all that goes with that. Now, in verse 22, it says, "Now the one sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the worries of this age and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful." My goodness. There are different ways to do that. Some people who don't really know a lot about the soil may try to keep planting a garden over and over and over again. The Bible gives illustrations of how the land needs to lay idle for a season so that it can replenish itself. And folks who don't do that, that creates a problem. I once talked to a fellow who is a missionary in the field of agriculture, and he had been to India, or not India so much as Africa, and he said that they could tell the local people the truth. Look, when a cow has a calf, don't start using the milk immediately. You need to wait just a little bit, and then it will yield more. But he said that they don't listen to us often, and so they'll get out and get maybe almost a quart of milk out of a cow that's just produced a calf. And gee, it could be more, but they won't wait. They don't believe that. They've been doing it for years, and so this is the way they do things. in spite of the fact that we have tried to give them good reasons not to, they elect to continue doing what they've done for years. This is one of the difficulties, I would think. This was a missionary who focused on agriculture. Oh, he did other things, and he talked about Jesus. But his real help to people was to help them learn how to get more out of the soil, how to get more out of their animals. Sometimes they wouldn't listen. Well, they could smile and say, okay, but just not do it. Now, as we continue here, it says that the worries of this age and the deceitfulness of the wealth choke out the word, and it sometimes becomes unfruitful. How can you choke out the word? By putting other words there that were not intended to be. Our Bible gives us illustrations of things. It gives us quotations. Some people like to use them, some do not. I can recall reading the Bible once, and I didn't realize this was in there, and I must have read it several times. It just didn't register with me. But it clearly states you're not to have a tattoo on your body. But apparently, a lot of folks don't pay any attention to that. They just feel like it's okay. God gave us a body. If he'd wanted us to have tattoos, he'd have put them on there himself. But this is not good enough for some people. And so it is in spreading the word or trying to understand it. You can't keep doing the same things and expect to get better results. And verse 23 says, but the one sown on the good ground, this is the one who understands, who hears the word. Does it produce fruit and yields? Yes. Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30 times what was sown. Now, it seems not like an awful lot, doesn't it? In Gwinnett County, we started gardens here across from the waterworks area where I live. And so we had garden plots. They were about 20 by 20. And for several years, my neighbor and I both went over and we worked at. And I had took on one of the responsibilities of taking excess food or that was donated from folks into the place where folks come and get groceries and other things. And so they had some fresh vegetables to get. And one year, the folks told me, they said, Jerry, just do this by weight. And I said, that's not good enough. My goodness, if I give them one watermelon, and that watermelon sells for $5, that's not illustrative of giving them like 50 bell peppers. Because the weight is different, but the peppers will be more valuable. So I did it both ways. And that particular year, we gave more than $1,000 worth of food to the food pantry in this end of the county. And we also did it by weight. There's a little less than 1,000 pounds that we did. Of course, poundage concerns cantaloupe and melons. These are the heavier things. Beans don't weigh quite as much, and neither does lettuce and this type of thing. And actually, one of the things that put into balance for about the first 6 weeks that I did it, most of what I took up there was lettuce and spinach. And you could take a sack full, it hardly weighed anything, but it was worth a good bit. Now, while we were there, some fella produced a plant. He developed a strawberry plant, and he sold them for 50 cents. That's probably a good buy. And he explained to them how you put it in the ground, and then you run an underground hose to it. The hose got holes poked in it so that the ground underneath it will get wet, not coming from the top of the plant, but coming up from the bottom. And he said this one plant will grow about 1 1/4 of a quart of berries from one plant. That's pretty good, isn't it? So folks bought this stuff and they put them out. And I thought, well, I'm not used to doing that. I do have some underground hoses, but I think I'll just stick to the methods that we had in Tennessee when I was picking strawberries. And everybody looked like, well, where'd you come from, Tennessee boy, that picked strawberries? Well, in Ray County, where I came from, we used to have a great big festival every year, a strawberry festival. There's a strawberry queen and so forth and so on, because we produced a lot of strawberries. And if you want to produce strawberries, the way we did it was just put them out in rows. You put your plants out, and as the runners come off, you clip them. I did one thing better. I'd take the clippings that we had clipped off and start a new row with them, or put them on the end of the row. And so we had a lot of berries. And a lot of folks came around, they looked, they said, Miller, that's not going, oh, that won't do it near as good as this. I said, well, just wait and see. At the end of the season, from the rows that I put, now this was not a lot of space, we had 19 gallons of strawberries that we picked. Other folks didn't have quite that much. And the difference, yes, we had good soil. That was part of it. But we also had a method that was a little better than what was being introduced. Now, if you wanted 1.5 quarts of berries, put 2 plants out and you'll have 2.5 quarts of berries, if what happens supposed to. Of course, a lot of people found they had problems with their underground hose and other type things. We need to be watchful of the soil, that's for sure. And anybody that's growing strawberries knows that you've got to move a patch of berries every couple of years and start in a new location. Because if you don't, this won't have any yield. One of the things that I learned in our backyard, which is right here, I'd learned it before. For some reason, wild strawberries get in there, and when they start growing with the ones that you planted, you can't really tell the difference. Now, some of their buds are yellow, where the regular strawberries may be white, but you have to wait till picking time, because the wild strawberries are real small, whereas the regular ones are larger. I was not a farmer when I grew up. I was just a small town boy. But our school system started with us beginning to pick strawberries the first week of May every year, because a lot of us went out and picked berries. We started back in July, middle of July maybe. But this was strawberry picking time. And the folks that did that, they provided the food, and I understand they still do, that you can still buy berries up there. They're very good, I'm sure. These are plants that are placed in good soil. Some soil is rocky, yes, it is. And you have to get the rocks out of there in order to get it to grow. We distribute seed. If you're planting grass, yeah, you can just throw it all out there. You walk along and just toss it here, there, and everywhere. Sometimes some of that grass seed will grow that way. Fescue will, rye will. And you don't do Bermuda grass that way. It doesn't grow in this area. There might be in certain parts of the world where it would. But the growing process in terms of plants, in terms of things that we put into the soil and get a yield from, these are things that local people learn about and apply. Jesus was trying to convey to us and Matthew recorded it, other Gospels had it, that we needed to make sure that our word didn't get tossed around here and there. Paul did some wonderful work, follow-ups. Missions were established, churches were built. Timothy had one, Titus had one, and these grew. Those churches don't exist today because that's all part of Turkey, and most of that is Muslim territory. But nonetheless, at that time, something was being developed by word of mouth, and Christianity sprang from a little bitty place. Jesus' first miracle in Cana, when he turned the water into wine. That's a little bitty town. Nobody ever heard much about it before then. It's in the Bible, so we have since then, but it's nothing major. This area was the foundation of Christianity. When Jesus came, it began to spread. And so we have a responsibility to spread that as well. Some of our soil is not good. In the United States, both the East Coast and West Coast, the upper parts of it, are just fertile territories for missionaries because not many people go to church there anymore. Could be any number of reasons. Now we even have challenges locally. Why is that? Well, we've been shut up for over a year, and a lot of people haven't attended church. Some of us got in the regular habit of watching it on television. Some did not. We want to hear the word, and we can go to church. That's a good place to get it because you get to associate it with other Christians. Some can tell you how to do things better than others. And frankly, friends, a lot of the things I learned about planting and reaping things was in church. There were several fellows there I could say, hey, when do you think's a good time to plant this? And I got really some sound advice every time I ever asked that. I had the beauty of knowing someone who knew our soil and knew how to get the most out of it, who could give you do's and don'ts. Jesus gave us some things to do. One is that we need to spread the word about him. Can you toss it away? Yeah, you can. But we need to work on watching what area we're in and working that area. Like what? Well, there used to be a lot of street preachers, and folks used to shun them, even Christians. It's like, well, he doesn't need to be down here on the sidewalk doing that. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. You don't have to do that. Your life presents an opportunity to show what Jesus would do. Whether you're smiling, whether you're happy, whether you have things to say that are meaningful. These are vital things. If you can't get out, you probably still have a telephone. I've had to move this one out of here. Invariably, it rings when I'm trying to develop a lesson. But those of us that can't get out very much, we can still use a phone. And believe me, so many people crave some fellowship with Christians. This is one of the things that we need to do. Will you hit the mark? No, not always. There's a fellow that worked for me many years ago that I witnessed to. He never did accept Christ as his Savior. He's still alive today. And another friend of both of us and I have talked, because the one that I spoke of, he now is in the state of Alzheimer's. And so my friend said, there are times in our conscience and we've got to pray that the Lord will convict him at that time. And you know, that's good, because that's about all we can do at this time, is pray that God will open up an opportunity for him to recognize his needs. We live in a world that may not last very long. You look around, you see things happening, and you know that those that indicate that maybe we are in some of the end times, there may be some truth to that. So I would encourage you to witness wherever you can in the best way possible. And I hope that you will continue to now get out now a little bit more to enjoy the beauty of God's world and to thank him for it as we do now. Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to mumble and stumble over a few words. Just pray that each one of us can take something with us and apply it to our lives so that we can affect lives of others in the way that a good sower would spread seeds. And we thank you for the opportunity to do that. And we thank you for putting us in positions where we're still here, we're still alive and kicking, as we say. And we're just grateful for all the good and wonderful things you do for us every day, Lord. And we ask this in the name of Jesus, your Son. Amen.